What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Wrestling for Life Network, and welcome back to the TNA review. Last week, we took a break. We did our Slammiversary preview and predictions. This week, we are back with the preview, and what a week we have had in TNA wrestling. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Like I said, welcome back to the Wrestling for Life Network and welcome back to the TNA review. We are 1 week removed from the biggest Slammiversary in 10 years with an attendance of 4,000 plus fans. It was a great show. We had Jordynne Grace retain the TNA Knockouts World Championship against Ash by Elegance. We got a new X Division champion and Mike Bailey, and we were guaranteed a new TNA World Champion after Joe Hendry eliminated Moose, and that new TNA World Champion is Nick Nemeth. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about today, so let's go straight into it. So Slammiversary last Saturday, we crowned some new champions. The System lost the tag team championships, the TNA tag team championships, and they lost the world championship as well. The only person in the System holding gold at this very moment is Alicia Edwards. She is still one half of the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Champions with Masha Slamovich. So right now, the System is down on their luck. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to get back to that championship scene because almost all of the members of the System no longer have gold. Jordynne Grace and Ash by Elegance at Slammiversary had an excellent showing in that match. Ash by Elegance really showed up and showed out. She hit some great moves. She hit some high spots. No surprise that Jordynne Grace did retain there. I kind of did want Ash by Elegance to win the title on this one. Nothing against Jordynne Grace. Y'all know I tout Jordynne Grace almost every week on this TNA review, but I just kind of wanted Ash by Elegance to win this match. But phenomenal match by these two women. They delivered in every sense of the word. And then Mike Bailey versus Mustafa Ali for the X Division Championship. What a match. What a match that was. Easily the best match of the night, easily the best match on the card. These two delivered, and the callback with Earl Hebner and the Montreal Screwjob. I think that was just perfect, and how they kind of played that into the Mustafa Ali and Mike Bailey story. Mike Bailey, as I thought, walked out of Slammiversary the new TNA X Division champion. Well deserved for Mike Bailey. I think Mike Bailey has been on the rise and has been on the rise in TNA since Bound for Glory last year in 2023 when he wrestled Will Ospreay in easily the best match of Bound for Glory that year. Mike Bailey deserves this moment, and I'm so happy that he is the TNA X Division champion. As I mentioned before, the System lost all of their gold except Alicia Edwards. And one of the championships they lost at Slammiversary was the TNA World Tag Team Championships, ABC versus the System, Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards. And when I tell you this was an excellent match, I have to tell you that this was an excellent match. And if you haven't seen this match yet, I implore you to go to Fight TV, go to the TNA Plus app to watch this match because it was fire from beginning to end. ABC and the System, Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards, they have a lot of chemistry in that ring, and it showed this past Saturday at Slammiversary. So happy that ABC picked up the victory. Where do we go here with the System, right? The System is, like I said, is down on their luck. So where do we go right now with the System? I'm not sure, but I'm interested to see how TNA kind of moves around this with the system because it's not looking good for them right now. But ABC deserved that championship win. So happy for Ace Austin and Chris Bay to see what they do with the TNA gold going forward in the future. We had another monstrous match at Slammiversary as well. We had Mike Santana versus Jake Something. And if you missed the TNA Slammiversary preview and predictions, myself and Phil talked about how Jake Something has something, just like his last name. He has something, and I don't know what that something is, but Jake Something is definitely top tier talent in TNA. He will eventually hold the TNA World Championship, I feel, but he has a lot of potential, and I can't wait to see him in that World Championship scene. Mike Santana, since he's returned to TNA Wrestling, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss from Mike Santana since he's came back to TNA Wrestling. Everything he is doing right now is excellent. In his entrance, you just feel the energy that he brings to the TNA crowd, to the TNA arena, the impact zone. The energy that he just brings is perfect for what TNA needs. And that match that he had with Jake Something, oh my God. That every match on that card really did hit, right? I think every match on the card really did hit. And now this match with Mike Santana and Jake Something was really good. Solid match. High spots, high moments, big moves, two big men just slapping meat in that ring, as people would say today in professional wrestling. This was an excellent match by all accounts at Slammiversary. Mike Santana did pick up the win, but y'all, if this is another one, if you haven't seen this match from Slammiversary, I think you need to go back and see this match. We can't talk about Slammiversary without talking about PCO versus AJ Francis. I just want to talk about AJ Francis for a quick second. AJ Francis took has taken TNA by storm. AJ Francis came in and just really boosted and elevated TNA, and I really like it. He had his first feud with Joe Hendry. That was hilarious on both ends. His second feud has been with PCO, and this feud was great. And the match at Slammiversary, it's PCO's wheelhouse. It was a street fight. So this was everything a street fight should have been, and kudos to both men. PCO took a hard chair spot where he was thrown on the top basically of two chairs. I don't know how this man does it near 60 years old, but he still does it. He still puts his body on the line each and every week for the TNA fans. And this man is just great in every aspect of being a professional. And the match itself, solid from both ends. PCO showed up and showed out. AJ Francis did his thing. We got a new champion, and I expected it. I really did believe PCO was going to become the new champion. It was his home country. And I think at the press conference, the Slammiversary press conference, he said he had never wrestled in front of his family and he had never wrestled in Montreal. I believe that's what he said. So I kind of figured TNA was going to give him the victory, and it was much needed. So PCO, the new digital media champion and the international heavyweight wrestling champion. PCO is a double champ in TNA. But kudos, like I said, kudos to both men, especially AJ Francis, because his run in WWE was not that great and it was filled with a lot of hate. That rhymed. I wasn't expecting that to rhyme, but it was filled with a lot of hate. He has came to TNA and he's blossomed in every sense of the word, from being a great, personality and a heel, and just being an all-around good wrestler in the ring as well. So kudos to AJ Francis for reestablishing his career in TNA, and kudos to PCO for still going hard at almost 60 years old, because like I said, I don't know how this man continues to do this. There's one other match that I want to talk about from Slammiversary, and that's NXT TNA. It was the Rascals versus the No Quarter Catch Crew. This was a phenomenal match. This was a phenomenal 6-man tag team match. The Rascals all together again in TNA and facing a whole full-blown NXT team and the No Quarter Catch Crew. And this was a fun match, a solid match, great on all ends. The Rascals together shine great. The Rascals did win this match. So technically, No Quarter Catch Crew is a full NXT team, and then the Rascals is half TNA, and well, a third of TNA, and then you got a little bit of NXT in there. So NXT and TNA technically won in this match, right? I'm just saying. Yeah, they technically won in this match. But anyway, this was a solid match, a fun match. I loved it. The Rascals teaming up in TNA seems like it's going to continue, as we'll talk about a little later, that they will be wrestling next week on Impact. It will be the Rascals versus Trent Seven, Speedball Mike Bailey, and I believe Kushida. So I'm excited for that one. But the NXT TNA crossover continues, and it continues very strong. Before I move on, I do quickly want to touch on the TNA World Championship match, 6-way elimination match. We got a new champion in Nick Nemeth. But I think the most shocking thing, or the second shocking thing that happened in that match, other than Joe Hendry eliminating Moose, was Josh Alexander turning heel on Joe Hendry. I think that was very shocking. And apparently, we're supposed to hear from Josh Alexander on this week's episode of TNA Impact, or I should say this past week's episode of TNA Impact. And Josh Alexander didn't say anything. He didn't give us an explanation why. And Josh Alexander doesn't need to give us an explanation why, because Josh Alexander is the standard of this iteration of TNA wrestling. Josh Alexander is the blueprint of this iteration of TNA wrestling. Josh Alexander doesn't have to give any type of statement, doesn't have to give any type of conclusion of why he did this. This is Josh Alexander, the longest reigning TNA world champion in history, the man that carried a lot of TNA's weight on his back. We don't need an explanation. And TNA, you will never get me to boo Josh Alexander, because he is the heart and soul of this iterations of TNA wrestling. I'm liking this. I'm liking where this is potentially going with Josh Alexander and Joe Hendry. But now let's quickly get into TNA Impact this week. So it kicked off with our new TNA World Champion, Nick Nemeth. And Nick Nemeth basically talked about how he's going to be a fighting champion, how he's glad the championship is off of Moose because Moose was protected. So he's ready to fight for this company. He said he will defend that championship anytime, anywhere, and in any company. So we might get to see Nick Nemeth in WWE again with the NXT TNA crossover, but he was interrupted by Mustafa Ali. And basically, Mustafa Ali basically said that he was cheated out of the X Division Championship at Slammiversary, and that he was screwed all over, not by Mike Bailey, not just by Mike Bailey, but by Earl Hebner, by the TNA fans. But he has a new purpose, he has a new goal, he has a new campaign, and that is to make the TNA World Championship great again. So guess what? That set up a match, because Mustafa Ali tried to attack Nick Nemeth. Nick Nemeth got the upper hand, so that set up a match next week. On next week's episode of TNA Impact, Nick Nemeth will be defending the TNA World Championship against Mustafa Ali, and this is the first time the championship has been defended on TNA Impact since last November, when Alex Shelley was the champion. So this is going to be a great match. I'm going to briefly go over the card a little later for next week, because it's really stacked, but be seated for the TNA World Championship match next week. One of my favorite matches from this week's episode of TNA Impact was a tag team match. It was a Hammerstone, Alex Hammerstone and Ash by Elegance teaming up to take on Jordan Grace and Eric Young. This was a fun match. Both teams got the upper hand at one point. Jordan Grace, a powerhouse, stood toe to toe with Alex Hammerstone. Jordan Grace, what are you thinking? She almost got Alex Hammerstone off of his feet. Actually, she did, and he slipped out. But yeah, great match. When they announced this match at Slammiversary after the backstage kerfuffle with all of them, I was like, this is weird. This is a weird match to have on TNA Impact, but it delivered. I'm glad Alex Hammerstone is back. I know he was out for a couple of months there. I believe he was injured. Eric Young being prominent back in the TNA picture again is great. Jordan Gray still at the top of the TNA Knockouts division, and Ash by Elegance on the rise in that company. You got two TNA originals, basically. I call Jordan Grace a TNA original, an Impact original from when she started with Jordan Grace and Eric Young. And then you have two TNA newcomers in Alex Hammerstone. I don't know if they dropped the Alex, but I'm still calling him Alex Hammerstone. And, formerly known as Dana Brooke, Ash by Elegance. So this was a great match to showcase the new talent and the old talent. Guess who picked up the victory, though? It wasn't Jordan Grace and Eric Young. It was Ash by Elegance and Alex Hammerstone. So I want to see where this goes. Does this lead to a potential down the line rematch with Jordan Grace and Ash by Elegance? Because Eric Young and Alex Hammerstone did face off in the Slammiversary pre-show. That was Alex Hammerstone's return. So could this set up a second match between those two? Since Alex Hammerstone has arrived in TNA, he's faced Josh Alexander. That was his first feud, one of the Impact TNA originals, and now he's going after Eric Young, another TNA and Impact original. And so I think that'd be great for Alex Hammerstone as he continues to build his resume in TNA as he heads towards the TNA World Championship, wherever that may be. It probably won't be in 2024, but in 2025, I can see maybe Alex Hammerstone holding that TNA World Championship. And Ash by Elegance is Ash by Elegance. Like, what else is there to say? She's the GOAT. Okay. I'm just kidding. I know, yeah, she's not the GOAT, but she's getting better in the ring. And I really love that Ash by Elegance is a part of TNA. So yeah, I don't know where this goes. Does it set up a Jordan Grace Ash by Elegance 2? Maybe at Emergence, maybe at Victory Road, maybe at Bound for Glory. I don't know. We still got a couple of months for Bound for Glory. And speaking of Bound for Glory, when are we gonna get that announcement of where it's gonna be? But anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out going forward. So during this week's episode of TNA Impact, we did get a backstage segment with the Rascals and Speedball Mike Bailey. The Rascals basically congratulated Speedball Mike Bailey for winning the X Division Championship, but then they threw out a challenge. They kind of threw out a challenge. They said the first X Division match ever in TNA wrestling was a 6-person tag team match. So they were throwing out a challenge for Mike Bailey to find two other teammates to face the Rascals in some 6-man tag team action. And Mike Bailey did. So next week on TNA Impact, the Rascals will be taking on Mike Bailey, Trent Seven, and Kushida in 6-person tag team X Division action. This is going to be a phenomenal match. It's all going down next week. Like I said, the TNA Impact card for next week is kind of stacked. The main event of TNA Impact this week was stacked. It was ABC teaming up with Matt Hardy to take on the System, Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, and JDC. And everyone had to come out for this match. Everyone had to come out for this match. Moose came out to be in the corner of the System, obviously. And then Joe Hendry came out to be in the corner of Matt Hardy and ABC. And when Joe Hendry came out, the intense stare down between Moose and Joe Hendry. That's because Joe Hendry was the one to eliminate Moose at Slammiversary. Moose is no longer champion because of Joe Hendry, but the stare down between those two was so intense. They basically set up two potential storylines within the past week with Joe Hendry, right? So you could do Joe Hendry versus Josh Alexander because of the turn at SummerSlam. And I would love to see that. And I think that's the direction TNA is heading in. And then you could potentially do Joe Hendry versus Moose. But I feel like if you do Joe Hendry versus Moose, somewhere the TNA World Championship would have to be involved because of how the potential feud started. But it's all good with TNA because they know what they're doing, and I know they're going in the direction of Joe Hendry versus Josh Alexander because Josh Alexander believes, and I believe it too, that he is the heart and soul of this iterations of TNA wrestling. And basically, Joe Hendry has taken the entirety of professional wrestling as a whole. This man is showing up on NXT weekly. This man is showing up on TNA weekly. I hear that he's going to be at a House of Glory event in September. Man is everywhere in professional wrestling. And I feel like Josh Alexander feels like that should be him. And that's what this story is. And that's what I'm excited to see. But this match, this tag team match at the end of Impact, all over the place. Moose had to get involved. Joe Hendry had to get involved. Everybody and their mama had to get involved. But who were the eventual winners? It was ABC and Matt Hardy, the new TNA World Tag Team Champion, standing tall. And Matt Hardy standing tall after getting his revenge on JDC at Slammiversary. Because if you don't know, or if you don't remember, JDC took out Jeff Hardy, and JDC also took out Matt Hardy's wife. He attacked her. So Matt Hardy was out for blood, out for revenge at Slammiversary. He got that at Slammiversary, and he also got that on this week's episode of TNA Impact. This week's episode of TNA Impact was wild. We had a video package with Rosemary, which I love what they're doing with Rosemary and the video package, but also I'm confused of what they're, what Rosemary is saying in these video packages. It seems like she's going after Ash by Elegance, but she's by doing that, she's going after her personal concierge, George Iceman. Everything is all over the place right now in TNA wrestling, and I love it. I love what they're doing right now. It's so good. You got to keep glued to it every week. We got new champions in ABC. We got new champions in Nick Nemeth. We got new champions in Mike Bailey. It's a whole new era right now with all new champions except Jordan Grace in TNA wrestling, and except Alicia Edwards, which I'm still shocked about that Alicia Edwards is still holding gold. But yeah, you got to keep watch each and every week. It gets better and better every week. I don't know how TNA does it, but this is the wrestling show that I continue to look forward to the most each and every week. It's like I got to get to Thursday. I got to get to Thursday. I got to get to Thursday because TNA wrestling is on, and TNA wrestling is about to deliver a great show. Before I end this today, I do want to quickly go over the stacked card for TNA Impact next week. I'm looking forward to next week's episode. So we got the Rascals versus Trent Seven, Mike Bailey, and Kushida in 6-man tag team X Division action. We will hear from Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. He has a lot to say. I'm sure he has a lot to say from what happened at Slammiversary. I don't know what's going to happen on NXT this week because he will be at NXT and he will be doing his famous concert at NXT. So something could transpire there that leads into next week's TNA Impact. I don't know, but we'll see. So we will hear from Joe Hendry next week. Jody Threat will be taking on Masha Slamovich. This is going to be good. Jody Threat and Dana Luna came up short at Slammiversary. So next week, Jody Threat will be taking on Masha Slamovich. And finally, the TNA World Championship will be on the line. Nick Nemeth will be defending against Mustafa Ali, and this is sure to be a banger match. And I know because it's TNA Wrestling. They're going to give these two gentlemen time. So next week, this will probably be the main event, and TNA will give them time, and this is going to be a phenomenal match by Nick Nemeth and Mustafa Ali. So tune in to TNA Impact next week. It's going to be a great show. I will be back here again next Saturday, breaking down everything that happens between the week with TNA and with TNA Impact, with a small review of covering everything that goes down on TNA Impact. I thank you for joining me today. It was fun to go over Slammiversary and everything that went down at Slammiversary, all of the drama, all of the wins, all of the losses that happened at Slammiversary. And this past week's episode of TNA Impact was very, very stacked, but I felt like I needed to lean towards Slammiversary because that was a huge moment and pay-per-view for TNA in the past 10 years. But again, thank you for joining. If you are watching on YouTube, I thank you. If you are listening on any of the podcasting platforms, I want to thank you again. But you will see me or hear me next week on another edition of the TNA Impact Review.